We have some breaking news as the New York Rangers have traded for Reilly Smith from the Pittsburgh Penguins and some other free agency moves or lack thereof. Chris Drury has not been too active in the free agency window so far. We're going to break all of that down, but before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 80% of you watching our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. We're officially in free agency and not much has happened on the New York Rangers front. Chris Drury is taking his time with some decisions, and there are a lot of pretty good options out there still available anyway, so we will get into it. But first order of business is the first thing that happened today, and we will get to the Reilly Smith stuff in just a second because it is breaking news as I'm recording this. But the first piece of news that came out today is Sam Carrick will be signing with the New York Rangers, and obviously Sam Carrick spent some time with the Edmonton Oilers this season as well as the Anaheim Ducks. The Rangers will sign Sam Carrick per Andy Strickland. Carrick skated in 10 playoff games for the Oilers in their run to the Stanley Cup Final and has played 8 years in the NHL. Pretty good depth signing. A lot of Rangers fans I saw the memes all over Twitter. A lot of people are pretty frustrated with Chris Drury right now because he's not going after the big fish, but he is a bit handcuffed too. You have to remember, Igor Shesterkin is going to command a big contract at the end of this season. There are a lot of big contracts already on the Rangers, so he has to fill in the spots pretty carefully, and he does that with Sam Carrick in this move. And the Sam Carrick deal is 3 years, carrying a $1 million AAV, so really not a lot of money. It's a real depth signing, somebody who can help you in the playoffs. He didn't score much for the Oilers either, but you need those depth guys when you go deep in the playoffs to just burn minutes off the clock, adds a physical presence. Again, just a depth signing for the New York Rangers, and a pretty interesting one at that. You're adding some Stanley Cup pedigree as well. He didn't win it, but Stanley Cup final pedigree, that is. He did make the final and went on that journey with the Oilers. And there is something to be said about that in a player as well. So pretty interesting signing here from Chris Drury. And this is something I thought was pretty interesting as well from Vince. This quote is from Vince and tweeted out by Phil. At this stage, if Drury isn't thrilled with what's left out there, we also can't rule out the possibility of more low-cost grit depth signings and hoarding the rest of their cap space for potential trades, whether it be this summer or at the deadline. Hence, the signing of Sam Carrick. Exactly what was said in this tweet. If he's not happy with what's left. And obviously, there was a lot of big signings right at the 12 o'clock Eastern mark with a lot of players going to Nashville, a lot of big names. You know, Tampa made some good moves. Pretty interesting. The Rangers, though, staying relatively quiet, but adding some depth options here. But I don't hate the idea of, hoarding the rest of their cap space for potential trades, whether it be this summer or at the deadline. I don't hate the idea because you can still bolster your team later on in the season heading into the deadline to where you see fit, right? So it's always not a bad idea to have some extra cap space as well. So I don't necessarily hate that. And then earlier in the day as well, Friedman was predicting that Teravainen or Toffoli could be to the New York Rangers. Didn't end up happening. Obviously, both signed elsewhere. Toffoli going to San Jose, which I thought was pretty interesting, but would have helped with the, winger problem that the Rangers have. It's not really a problem, but they're still looking for a top winger. Toffoli would have helped with that, but unfortunately did not come to fruition. But to go back to this for a second, don't hate the fact that they're, keeping cap space. It's never a bad thing to have extra cap space. And before we move on to some breaking news with Reilly Smith, let's get into Sam Carrick's stats. Nothing too special. Like I mentioned, depth player. He's going to be 33 coming into this season. Has some interesting advanced numbers. Nothing too crazy, but he might be able to play on your penalty kill. He doesn't play too much. Plays between 10 to 15 minutes a night, probably on the low end there. He only had 16 points in 77 games this year. He played on a pretty bad Anaheim Ducks team as well before the Edmonton Oilers acquired him. Wouldn't look too much into his plus minus either, but could be an interesting option there for the New York Rangers in the playoffs down the stretch in the season. He's not going to do anything crazy for you like point wise or anything like that. He's just a good depth physical option. So that was interesting. Now we have some breaking news from Elliotte Friedman. Sounds like Pittsburgh is trading Reilly Smith to the Rangers. Now, that was pretty big news. This just happened as I'm recording this, right? And if we go a little bit further, from Chris Johnson too. We'll get into that in just a second. If you look at the cap hit until the end of next season, he makes $5 million. The Rangers can't afford this. They had about $15 million to play with this free agency. So obviously they didn't go out and sign somebody, but they're getting Reilly Smith, who is he won the Stanley Cup. He brings that Stanley Cup pedigree, like I said, right, to the Rangers. He can be a good scoring option for you. And let's get into his stats now. I mean, we know that he makes $15 million, but when you look at his stats, he put up 40 points in 76 games this past season on a pretty not great Pittsburgh Penguins team. He is going to be 34 heading into next offseason, but that's fine because his contract expires then. So for the time being this year, this is a pretty good option for the Rangers. I'm not exactly sure where he fits in the lineup. He could maybe be a third line player. This could lend to the fact that Capo is getting traded as well. Capo Caco could be on his way out because of this, but he plays almost 20 minutes a night. Can be an option for you in different places throughout the lineup. They're going to have to figure that out, obviously. But yeah, 40 points on the Pittsburgh Penguins. It wasn't a fit for him in Pittsburgh, so this could be an interesting option for the New York Rangers. And again, if it doesn't work out, $5 million is quite a bit to eat this season, but it's not terrible, right? It's not terrible because the contract ends after this season. And in terms of the return, draft picks are the return. We're not actually, at the time of me recording this, we're not entirely sure of what the draft picks are or what the return is entirely. But we do have some breaking news as I'm recording this. Things continue to come out. We do have the return now. It is Reilly Smith to the Rangers for a 2nd round pick and a 5th round pick, and that is from Rangers Video. So a little bit of a tough price to pay for Reilly Smith. I mean, at the end of the day, for 40 points, giving up a 2nd round pick, it's not horrible. He should be able to come into the Rangers lineup and make a bit of a difference. This is definitely not the guy that Rangers fans were wanting or had their eyes on, but can be a very interesting option for the New York Rangers heading into next season. And I don't think by any means Chris Drury is done. I think Jeff Skinner's still on the board. There are some rumors about him. There are a couple options still out there that Chris Drury can take a look at. But let me know what you think in the comments. So first of all, the Sam Carrick, it's a lower end signing, but the Sam Carrick signing, Reilly Smith trade, very interesting option for the Rangers. They're going to have to take on $5 million for the next year, but again, they have they can opt out of it at the end of next year because his contract ends. And what you think of the free agency window so far from Chris Drury. What grade are you giving Chris Drury so far? Because again, the day is not even done. We're heading into July 2nd. There's still a couple players on the board, but a little disappointing, I think, for some Rangers fans. They had some really high hopes for the Rangers, and there's not much going on. And it might have to do with the Jacob Trouba situation, which I'm going to have a video on later as well, because that is getting a little ugly as well. So let me know what you think in the comments of Chris Drury's grade for this free agency, at least July 1st right now, right? We don't have the whole picture, but making somewhat of a big splash with the Reilly Smith acquisition here this year. I wonder where he fits in the lineup. Let me know in the comments too where you think he ends up in the lineup. But if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.